Okay, so we're live. This is I'm having a bit of technical issues trying to get this to stream in 1440p. So let me know if the video quality is okay. This is now in 1080p, unfortunately, but I had to change some settings around. So let me know how the quality is, and as usual, let me know how the audio levels are because I am not currently monitoring them because of the some of the settings changes that I've had to do. Um, and I ran out of time. So we're just gonna go. We're gonna do it live. This is how these live things go. Um, nice to see you guys in the chat. Rob, good to see you. Some familiar names, listener, of course. Got lots of folks in here today. The stream looks al dente. It makes me hungry. Um, okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to do a live review of the Moondrop Venus. This is a planar magnetic over-ear headphone, open back, and after that we're going to do a little bit of Q&A on the Venus, and then we'll go into spicy hour after that. So hold your spicy questions until afterwards. Is it? Is the camera okay? Or is the stream okay? You look pretty in any format. You look pretty in any format. All right. The main thing I care about is that the audio quality is good, because that's the most important thing for us audio nerds. High hopes for the Venus. Yeah. So if you guys are looking for the measurements for this, I've already done a post that's linked in the description. That's up on the audio files, which is our new editorial website. That's where we do all of the reviews, the guides, etc. And so measurements of this are already out, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper into them in this live stream. We'll go through, some of the additional things. We'll talk a little bit about the distortion, or harmonic distortion, and whether or not that's audible or matters, and a couple of other things. We'll go into some more fine-grained stuff here. One thing to note is I have also been running this off of a wide range of amplifiers. This is a headphone that does require an amplifier, or at least I'm going to say it does. It's the impedance is low, as often you find with planar magnetic headphones, but the sensitivity is also low, so or relatively low. So I was running this from the Vioelectric HPA V550, but then I also was running it off the Forge and a number of other different sources. So just keep that in mind that, yeah, this is one that you're going to want an amplifier for it. Or I recommend an amplifier for it. All right. Sounds good to me through my phone. Come on. If you sound bad on stacks, what can I do? Switch headphones? Maybe I'll be too detailed. I don't know. So yeah, let's dive in. So let's begin with the build quality, design, and comfort as usual. Just a quick note: this was sent over by Shenzhen Audio for evaluation. So big thanks to Shenzhen Audio for sending this in for review. I'm actually quite fortunate that we actually got this early on. This was one of the few headphones that we've gotten in advance of release. So big thanks to them for sending that over quickly, which is great. But let's talk about the build and the design and all of that. So you guys can see this here. I'll hold it up. The first thing, it's quite striking for the visual design with this kind of structure. Now, these are kind of like slats. So it is very open, this one. It might not look like it, but you can actually kind of see the driver through the grill here. And I find that the grill, like, you don't want to be like pushing on this too much, because these metal slats can be a little bit sharp even. They haven't cut me yet, but I could imagine that they could have that effect. They do move a little bit, like when you see that, right? So I wouldn't push on them too much, but just so you guys know, like, this is a cool, striking design, but it is still very, very open. And it does feel, the whole build feels reasonably sturdy. You can see there's like screw holes here, And so if you ever wanted to like modify anything, it probably wouldn't be that challenging to do. I'll explain why in a second, but this build, like there is a little bit of cup swivel here. The mechanism for that is this little piece right here. It feels like one of the more sturdy, well engineered for its mechanical design and acoustic design out of all of the more recent Chinese manufacturer uh, headphone brands. Like I'm thinking the comparables here are like the The-Audio Wraith and the Gold Planar GL2000. This one feels like the best engineered version, even though the Wraith was pretty good for its mechanical design as well. This one just feels sturdier, more solid, and then also it's super industrial for the look and the design, but I kind of like that because it makes it feel a little bit like no nonsense. Like corners weren't cut. This is all just like metal. You know, the yokes feel it's metal. It feels sturdy and solid. Like there aren't those failure points. I remember on the Gold Planar GL2000, they used kind of like a little rubber piece underneath, and that just sort of like the whole side of it ended up unscrewing for some reason, and yeah, it just wasn't secure. But this all feels very sturdy and secure. For the headband, this is my main point of criticism with the comfort and the ergonomics. The headband elastic is a little bit on the stiff side. So, you know, for me, I got a monstrous head. So when I wear it, it's not that it's too heavy or anything like that, and actually the rest of the comfort is pretty good. It's just that because the elastic strap, the tension is quite tight, this piece kind of presses inwards there on the top of my head. So what I would personally do, given that I have a large head, I would probably look to replace this elastic strap or the headband system with something else that has a little bit more give. It's this motion here that's sort of the issue. Let me just make sure you guys can actually see this. It's not all out of focus, which is terrible. All right, is that better? You guys can see this now better? So, well, it's still all out of focus. That's terrible. I'm sorry. There we go. So, yeah, that's my main criticism with the comfort, but I think for most people it'll be okay. And thankfully, if you do want to replace the elastic strap, the screws are right here for that, so it's not too challenging to mess with. Now the pads, this is another thing. The pads here are just like the size of my head, monstrous. And this is really cool. I love this pad design because there's two key things with the pad design here. One is that, yes, obviously it's huge for the opening, but the other is that the pads themselves are not that thick. I'm reminded of, I mean, that yeah, there's enough material there for them to be cushiony, but with pads like these that are not that thick, it actually, and with this sort of like large opening design, it means that you're actually going to get a fairly consistent result across users. It's not going to vary that much, and that's also a benefit, you know, because people have all kinds of different coupling with the head, and if you have really thick pads, this can affect the way that it sounds to people. And with this one, you're likely to find a fairly consistent result across, you know, for the coupling and all of that. And I confirmed this on the rig as well with the position changes and stuff like that. No matter what I mean, there was a subtle change with the positioning, but really not that much. And so that's good because it means that there's you know, people are gonna have an easier time with the wearing situation to get the tuning to be, or the sound to be what the intended tuning is on the headphone. So thumbs up there. When you take the pads off, I'm going to show you guys the driver. The pads just sort of pop off like that. The driver here is this very shiny silver kind of thing, which is pretty cool. It's a driver I haven't seen before. That, you know, a lot of the other drivers, you know, headphones that come out, I've like, I'm thinking of the Harmonic Dyne G200 and the The-Audio Wraith. Like, those are drivers that I've come across in other headphones before, and this one I haven't. So this seems to be a new design that I'm not familiar with. Seems like they've done a lot of R&D on this one. Also a large, this is again a large diaphragm, the large driver design, one of the largest that's out there, similar to what you get. Like, this is in the same ballpark for size as what you get with the Hi-Fi Man planars. So there's a lot that you can do if you have that much real estate with the driver. So this is good. Now, I think that's basically it for the ergonomics and all the rest of that stuff. The connectors here are 3.5 millimeter, which is fine in my opinion. They do give you, well, at least for the one that they sent over to me, they gave 2 cables, but I'm just using a different cable right now. But yeah, I have mostly good things to say here about the mechanical design. The industrial design looks a bit it looks a bit. let's just go there. But at the same time, I think in a way that is unique and kind of cool. So let's now move on to the sound quality, and we'll go into the frequency response here. And I'm just very hopeful that my streaming software allows me to do this without crashing the measurement software. So let's try that. Bam. All right. So you can see it, hopefully. So this is the frequency response result for the Moondrop Venus. And simply put, this is solid. This is really good. There's not too much to complain about here. You see, I mean, I've described this as somewhat Hi-Fi Man-esque, and I think that's fair. The overall tuning here is very similar to what you find with headphones like the Sundara. Also to a similar extent, the Edition XS is kind of like this. Let me actually just double check one thing here. Make sure I have the right file. I believe this is the right measurement. I just want to make sure that it's, yeah, it is the right one. So with the bass, yeah, I mean, it does sit a little bit lower here in the sub bass, but that's not really an issue because, you know, for the most part, it goes down into the frequencies that are audible. It's only the ultra low sub bass stuff that's a little bit subdued, but I think that's fine. And then you get a little bit more presence here at the lowest part of the ear gain. With a slight, like this is going to be a little bit of masking here in the mids, but what this does is it causes the mid-range to get pulled a little bit forward for certain fundamental tones, and it's in a way that like it's kind of nice actually, because there's good ear gain up to the top of the ear gain here at around 3K. Like it's kind of a nice presentation with a slight kind of forward character to the lower mids where fundamental tones will dominate there. I don't worry too much about the phase cancellation at a 5.3K. At least I think it's phase cancellation that's going on here. I'd expect. And then you can see, yeah, it's a bit brighter, right? This is fine, like this area. Let me just actually show you what this looks like when you watch the red line here. This is when I smooth it to the same degree as the target. So it's, yes, it is a little bit forward there, but it's not that far off. And then, yeah, with above 10K is where things go a little bit bright. So the overall presentation here is one that is mostly neutral, but slightly bright leaning, with a little bit of mid-forward character as well. And it's one that I quite like. In particular, pardon me, in particular, what I like about this is that the ear gain region here, like the strongest part of the ear gain as the rise goes from 1K up to like 4K basically. And for those who are unaware, ear gain is the effect of the ear on incoming sound, and so that's why there's a rise there. The ear is amplifying these frequencies, basically all the frequencies. But where this rise is a little bit relaxed, meaning that for anybody who finds, for the music that they're listening to, for anybody who finds, most quote unquote neutral headphones to be a little bit shouty, the Venus is not. So if you're thinking like, oh, Hi-Fi Man headphones, like they're too shouty for me, if that's kind of your opinion. Oh wait, is the stream still going? Are we still live? Okay. Sorry about that, guys. YouTube is doing terrible things to me today. So yeah, if you're thinking like Hi-Fi Man headphones, they are a little bit too shouty for me. The exception there is the Sundara 2020, which also has a kind of similar presence to the upper mid range. Um, the Venus is not shouty, so it's just a little bit on the leaner, brighter side of things. So what I do with EQ, and again EQ Gang Unite, is I just really kind of give it a bass boost, and then I drop some of the upper treble, and it's really easy to do. Like with two filters, I got this sounding, for tonality, really, really, really nice. It's not a difficult one to EQ. I don't worry about this 5.5K dip because, I mean, yes, it is there. It is audible. I did a manual sweep to be able to hear where the different peaks and dips are for my ear, and yeah, it does relax in this region. But overall, when you're listening to music, that's not really a big issue. It just means that there's a slight emphasis to, the mid treble and upper treble as a result. And same thing with this 9K dip. That's the well, it's not the same thing. The concha interaction with a 9K dip is what you want to see. This is supposed to be there. So just a little bit of brightness, and everything else is pretty darn solid. Now, one other thing I want to show you guys here, because this is our opportunity to deep dive a little bit. This is the air gap behavior with to show the resonance frequency of the driver. And pardon me, frog in my throat. This is the air gap behavior, and I want to show you guys this because the reason why I'm showing this is if for whatever reason you're not getting a perfect seal with this headphone, say for example you're wearing glasses that have really thick arms, or say you have a small face. People have small faces sometimes, and the bottom part of your jaw is like maybe not creating a perfect seal here, you're going to get a bass boost with this headphone. But it's one where the resonance frequency here is low enough to where you still will get the bass presence coming through. And it's not like up, at 500 hertz or something like that, where the bass is going to drop off and you're not going to get any bass. So this is one where if you don't have a perfect seal, if you know that that's how most headphones kind of wear for you, you don't need to worry about it, because you will still get the bass there coming through quite strongly. The other thing that this indicates to us is that there really isn't much, if any, driver damping going on whatsoever, because the peak here for the resonance frequency is very narrow. So it's a very high Q peak. And in my view, this is also nice. It's nice to see. It doesn't mean that if you don't see this that it's bad or anything like that, but when I see this I go, oh, that's very cool, because it means that it means that basically there's lots of potential for this driver in the bass. Say for example, if you wanted to do something with a controlled leak with a different pad or something like that, you would be able to do that. But that's just something for modders and people who are into headphone acoustic development and stuff like that. People nerdier than me even. But I like to see this. So that's that. I wanted to also show you guys relative to the Edition XS from Hi-Fi Man, which is, I mean, you can see there's a lot of measurements here. This one. And again, very similar. There's a couple of key differences here, but the biggest one being that the Edition XS it's got a little bit more presence here in the lower regions. It's got a little bit more of a dip at around like 1.5K, and then also a little bit more ear gain throughout the upper mids, and it is a little bit closer there as far as the overall tilt for the treble. But for the most part, fairly similar. It also has a little bit of a upper treble zingy quality, but again, not too bad. The thing about this comparison, I talked a little bit in the original article for the Venus that I found its soundstage to be not quite as wide as the Edition XS, and I think this is why. There's if you think about like the HD100S from Sennheiser that has a mid-range or mid to upper mid-range dip in this region as well, and then also a little bit more of that sort of like treble presence. The Edition XS is closer to that kind of thing, but that's not to say that the soundstage on the Venus is bad. It's solid. It's just that I think this is why I find the Edition XS to be just a little bit wider there. So if that's something you really care about, but personally, I find soundstage to be not that important, minimally important. But other people have much higher requirements for soundstage than I do, so that's fine. Let's look at the distortion character here. And this is taken at 90, what is this? Yeah, it's at over 90 dB, depending on where you want to, look. But so at probably higher than normal listening volumes, and the distortion is kept fairly well under control. Red is your second, so it's not going to be audible at all. And again, distortion, not something that you need to really care about unless it's really bad. But with this one, like, not something that you would ever hear, which is great. So I think that's basically it for the frequency response, for the measurements. Let's talk a little bit about the subjective stuff here. I'm going to bring back my smiling face. Ta-da! So for the subjective technical qualities of this headphone, I'm going to describe this as good. It is competitive, but it is not the kind of thing that's going to set the world on fire for technicalities. And to describe that a little bit more, or get into it a little bit more, I find the mid-range detail and clarity for trailing ends of tones, tones that token the mid-range frequencies, things like vocals, piano tones, brass instruments, I find that to be very good. And I think this is also partially as a result of that slightly forward character there to some of the fundamental tones that comes, through, in a very, very clear manner, which is nice. I think that the instrument separation here is also good, but this is where, again, it's not as good as what I find with the Edition XS. But not far behind, so I'll put it that way. And I think this is also partially because of that slight treble sheen to the whole thing, with that sort of mid treble and upper treble lift. This is just speculation on my part here, but I think that might be why, because I kind of hear that as dominating a little bit for cymbal tones and things like that, percussive hits and so on. Again, this is my project is to try and connect these subjective takes with what I see on the graph, and sometimes I can do it and sometimes I can't, but this is also just it's a guess, right? You don't know for sure. Then unless you dive into EQ, but still. What else? Oh yeah, for sense of like dynamism and punch and impact and physicality, this is again not that special like you get with some of the Focals or the Fostex headphones, the dynamic driver headphones, but also it's totally fine. It doesn't sound for that sense of compression that you get with headphones like the Aeons, so this doesn't have that issue. It's closer again in technicalities pretty much across the board for strengths and weaknesses to what I find with the Edition XS from Hi-Fi. So it sounds very airy, very open. Good clarity for trailing ends of tones across the board. Generally decent soundstage. Instrument separations on point, but nothing crazy. And the thing that, like, if I were to say, is the thing that keeps it from being like competing with like the Hi-Fi Aria or some other fairly high-end planar magnetic headphones, is that this doesn't have quite that sense of like depth separation. That's hard to say. Say that 3 times fast. It doesn't have quite that sense of depth and separation that those ones do. And I was even comparing this against the HD100S, which is of course the soundstage king, and this also doesn't have that kind of presentation, that kind of soundstage. But I find for the other qualities there, it's competitive, with headphones that cost more, and I think that's what you want to see. So let's give a quick roundup or conclusion for this one. This is acoustically well engineered. It's mechanically well engineered. This is basically solid on all fronts across the board. I would still EQ it just a little bit, but it's by no means something that you have to EQ. This is going to sound pretty good to most people right out of the gate, and only if you're a super turbo nerd or like to tinker with getting your frequency response dialed in specifically for you is something where you're going to want to do that. But otherwise, I don't think you have to. So I definitely recommend this headphone for folks looking for something at around, $600. I think it's competitive at that price point, if maybe not something that is going to dethrone the giants, right? That's kind of how I'm going to put it. Now, the there was one other thing I wanted to mention with this, and it's that of all of the kind of newer, I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, of all of the newer planar magnetic headphones that are coming out of from Chinese manufacturer, like the IEM brands that you see, like again, Theaudio, Moondrop. This is Moondrop, obviously. Theaudio. I'm trying to think. Yeah, Harmonic Dyne. That type of stuff. This is the one that is making the jump to over-ear headphones the most strongly. All right, so this is a strong first planar over-ear high-end effort for Moondrop, and in my view, this is kind of like the coming out party for extremely good quality stuff from those brands. And I think other companies are going to see this, and they're going to use this as kind of like the benchmark there. And I think that's a good thing. This is something that headphones should be compared to, especially newer ones that are coming out around this price. They need to be at least this good, and that's solid, in my view. So definitely one that I recommend, and I'm very thankful that I think that because of this headphone, now this space is going to be even more competitive for the same reason that what we see with, a lot of these, brands like, Theaudio coming out with really competitive in-ear headphones. Same with Moondrop. I think we're going to start to see that with over-ear headphones, and Moondrop is leading the way on that front. But yeah, that's basically the live review of the Moondrop Venus. We can now open up the floor to Q&A. If you guys are wanting specific comparisons to other headphones with the Moondrop Venus, let me know, and we will dive into that. Okay. Ask questions. Diggleberry Dan, which is a great name. Just to comment on that there, you said that it's it's no small feat to be the standard that other headphones should be compared to. I mean specifically for the Chinese manufacturers, the new ones that are kind of like in this good value trend for the IEMs. I think specifically for that, obviously HiFiMan's been doing this for a long time, and I wouldn't really consider HiFiMan to be part of that trend of like really good value in your headphones. So what I would be looking for when I say that, it's the standard that new ones should be compared to. When I say that, I mean specifically for brands like if Theaudio wants to make another over-ear headphone, or if Harmonic Dyne wants to make another over-ear headphone, or if Gold Planar wants to, that kind of thing, basically. And I'm sure there's more of those. If they're coming out with that stuff and they want to be competitive, this is the example that they should follow. HiFiMan Ananda comparison. So the Ananda is a little bit the Ananda is a little bit more neutral, right? It's got a little bit more ear gain in the upper mids, and it doesn't have quite that treble brightness, but it is still pretty strong there for ear gain in the treble as well. So I'm going to basically say that, yeah, between the two, for sound quality, I probably lean still towards the Ananda just a little bit. It just sounds a little bit more focused there, even though there's a lot of similarity and familiarity there. The difference between the Ananda and the Edition X is a small one to begin with. The Edition X is a little bit more U-shaped, whereas the Ananda is a little bit more neutral because I guess it depends, because there's also the Ananda Stealth Magnet, which is most likely just going to have a little bit more upper treble, kind of like the Edition XS. So they're going to be pretty similar, but I do think that, the Ananda is the one that I would still pick for sound quality, with the caveat that like the Ananda, it doesn't necessarily have the best fit for everybody. It's got those elongated cups, so that might be a consideration, but I do find that the Ananda is a little bit more comfortable for me, even though it doesn't have cup swivel, because the headband thing is it doesn't press as strongly on my big boy head. Sundara comparison. So this is almost like somewhere in between Edition XS and Sundara for the kind of tuning. I'm not saying for competitiveness. I think it's I think it's more just different, if that makes sense. Like I can see a reason to actually prefer the Sundara, given that it is a little bit smoother there, but I can also see a little a reason to prefer this, given that it has better bass extension. So if you really want like sub bass extension, the Sundara rolls off a little bit at around like 30 hertz, but it also boosts above that. So it depends on what you want there. But there's a similarity there for the tuning overall. And between the two, I mean the Venus, it's a little bit more headphone, if that makes sense. It's a little bit larger, and it's there are certain things that are better about it, but overall, I'm going to recommend both of them still. The Sundara is, I think, still better value because it's like half the price. But, for folks who aren't into the hi-fi man build quality, or for whatever reason, they don't like the Sundara, maybe you want something a little brighter than the Sundara, the Venus is worth considering there. LCD2C comparison. I think the Venus is better. I'm not a huge fan of the LCD2C. It's competing in the sound department, but the design and construction seems to be so much better than the Edition XS. So certainly the headband on the Venus doesn't feel like, or even like the top piece, it doesn't feel as rickety. The Edition XS feels a little bit rickety for the way that the yokes connect to the headband. But I find the Edition XS to be more comfortable. It's more suited to larger heads, whereas this one I think is a little bit more suited to smaller heads. So yeah. Let's see. Does the seal break increase the bass? Yeah, you did miss it. The resonance frequency, yes, it does, and you can tell there's no significant driver damping on this one. Aeon closed comparison. Do you mean the Aeon X closed or the original? The Aeon X closed, I think, actually has a better frequency response, like a better tuning overall. Not better frequency response, but better tuning. But the Venus is a little bit more technical, a little bit more clear for trailing ends of tones, because the Aeons, they're a bit more on the kind of blunted side for trailing ends of tones. But the instrument separation on those Aeons is excellent. So it really depends on the qualities that you value. The Aeons are also definitely more comfortable. They're smaller, lighter. Actually, let me just double check the weight. Let's see if I can do this here. Oh no, my scale may be out of batteries. Can I do this? Is this gonna work? Oh Jesus. It is 570 grams. All right. Don't put anything metal near the outside, because the magnets will activate. I just noticed that. Crazy. Originally unclosed. Yeah, same thing. It's got a really good tuning for the unclosed. But the technicalities are a little better on the Venus. Compared to the HE6 SEV2, I do think the HE6 SEV2 is a little bit more competitive for sound quality, a little bit more, because it's extremely good value. The thing is, that's one again where the build quality is a question mark, and I think I've seen some pretty extreme unit variation with those, with the HE6 SEs and the V2s. Like where on some of them the ear gain is just like enormous, and on others the ear gain is much more like the Sundara, and I don't know why. I can't figure out why. So that's really the only issue with the HE6 SEV2. Otherwise, I would say it's that one is a little more competitive. Meze 109 Pro comparison. The Meze 109 Pro definitely more comfortable. I mean, it's a dynamic driver headphone, right? For soundstage, I do find the Meze 109 Pro to be competitive with this. The tuning is not that different. I think that the Meze 109 Pro, it's a little bit more kind of like subtle U-shape, because it has a little bit more of, or V-shape, I don't know what you want to call it there, because it has a little bit more of a mid-bass forwardness. And then the upper treble isn't, I mean, the treble itself on the Meze 109 Pro isn't quite as high in level, but there is a little bit more unevenness there throughout the frequency response to the Meze 109 Pro. So it's categorically different as far as the intangible subjective aspects, but the tuning isn't that different between the two. Does it vary between amps? Not really. What is happening with the Moondrop, with the one Moondrop put on hold because of Critical? I need the Void. I still need to get that one. I have the original, but I need to get the replacement for it. So I need to reach out to them and see if they can send that, and I'll send the one we have back. I haven't even taken it out of the box yet. I just because Corinne released his video on that, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll send it back. Or I should say, Corinne released a video, Moondrop released a statement, and then I decided not to. Jesus Christ. Dingleberry tan. How's the timbre? Well, I mean, the 4 to 5K dips all depend, and how that sounds for timbre or correctness. It all depends on the HRTF, the head-related transfer function. There's actually, if you look at design criteria for headphones from Aalborg, from Hammershøi and Mahler, there's a section there where they show all the results for head-related transfer functions, where they did the measurements there for real humans, and you can see that there are some that actually have like the dip goes kind of earlier. There's always a dip that goes down somewhere in the treble, right? And sometimes it goes down even earlier. So it's going to depend on the person where that dip shows up, or where that that quirk, that feature shows up, and how significant it is. Yeah, to answer the question for timbre, I mean, I do hear it to be planar-like, right? If that's a thing that you're referencing, but it's not like, I mean, the plastic equality for me, I think, one of the offenders there. It's a headphone that I recommend all the time, but the Aeon X Closed is particularly plasticky sounding, but it's it's one where the tonality is so good that, like, yeah, I'll forgive it that. Hey, what's up, Brandon? Will these finally make my Nickelback songs sound like good songs? No. Nothing can make Nickelback songs sound good. I'm sorry. All right. How's the build compared to the Edition XS? Yeah, I talked about this a little bit. The build on this, I think, it's more solid. Like, it's a very simple design, simple, but also like kind of like an industrial look to it. So the look is something that I think isn't going to be for everybody, for sure. But as far as like the actual like physical materials and the like what all this stuff is made of, it all feels more solid. Okay, it feels more like intricate, but also like, I don't know, well built at the same time. Easier to drive than Sundara? I have to double check the sensitivity there, but my gut instinct is no. I'd have to double check. Versus Focal Alex. Alex is definitely more punchy, more physical and impactful, bassier. Well, not bassier because it's also kind of bright, but it's more about that sort of like, yeah, sense of impact down low. But for the tuning, I am actually going to say I think the Venus's overall tonality is a little better. Well, it depends. It's a little bit clearer, but there's that sort of like mid-forward character on the Alex that I think a lot of people enjoy. So it depends what you like. There's a little bit of shrillness on the Alex, due to a couple of peaks there in the treble that the Venus doesn't have, but the Venus, it has more upper treble zing to it, if that makes sense. Can you compare it to the Hi-Fi Aria? Yeah, so the Aria is also what I would describe as kind of like a neutral bright, but the Aria's brightness comes from more ear gain in the upper mids, lower treble, and mid treble, whereas, well, I guess there is also more upper treble as well, but like it's a little bit more balanced there for the ear gain level. It's just that the whole range is boosted, right? And then also for the technical performance, the Aria is definitely superior. It's like, yeah, better instrument separation, better depth. You can kind of look forward into the music. Things pop out a little bit more, you know, specifically. um, but for the mid range detail, again, I mentioned this before. The Venus is solid. Or mid range clarity. These are just words. Okay, I think that's compared to the upcoming Resolve special. It's not. That's not something I'm talking about as a tangible product yet, guys. Like, that's, as a research project. Yeah, that's it's, I think about that a lot, but I'm not ready to comment on that. um, yeah. So that's basically, I think, it for Moondrop Venus discussion here, guys. Thanks to your questions. I figure now let's just dive right into spicy hour. So drop all of the spiciest takes that you can think about or come up with, and we'll run through them. And yeah, or if you just have questions in general. Where is that Denon AHD 9200 review? I had them for a few months now. Yeah, I have yet to get one in. It's not on my radar. I don't have any immediate, plans of covering the 9200. It's one that, some folks have requested it, but it's not the easiest thing to get a hold of for me. So that's why. It's not because I'm specifically avoiding it or anything like that. I'd love to review it. I just need someone to send it to me. So if you guys know somebody at Denon. Cheese grater headband. Yeah, you could. It does double duty because you can also use this as a cheese grater if you ever are in need of a cheese grater. Is a DAC worth it over using a laptop as a DAC? Depends on the DAC in the laptop, but probably. Spicy time. Whataburger spicy ketchup isn't spicy. I don't know what Whataburger is. You don't need an external DAC. It depends on what you have, for your integrated stuff. How much is the Moondrop Venus, and do you think it worth the price point in comparison to the other headphones? I think it's around 600. And is it worth it compared to everything out there? My answer is yes, if you're looking for that slightly brighter tilt for sound. I'm gonna say yes. I think it is. It's like it's tough because, like, at around $300 you have like that's already more expensive than the HD6XX, but like let's just say HD650s, 600s are in that ballpark kind of. You also have the Headphone Sundara, and then basically between that and like $1,200, or between that and 900, let's say, because the Clear's at 900. There's kind of like this no man's land of just like stuff isn't necessarily categorically better than anything else. It's just like a little different, and there's certainly a lot of things that are worse. But like I would place the Edition XS, the Ananda, the Alex, the Venus, Sundara. They're all kind of just different flavors of good, and then you have a number of terrible headphones in that price range as well. But like, there's no clear winner in my view that I could universally point to and say this is the thing at this price point. And then once you get a little bit higher up, yeah, then you start to get some more standouts because the price points, the gaps are so much more large. I'm not to say the price to performance is better; it's definitely worse. But like, you don't have everything being at around the same price point. DAC above $200 is not worth it just for sound quality. I don't think that's a spicy take. I think diminishing returns kick in pretty hard once you have like an actual like a standalone DAC, or let's just say like a decent DAC amp combo or a DAC and an amp. They don't need to be expensive. They could be fairly inexpensive. And yeah, I think that that's the price to performance stuff just kind of goes out the window after that. And unless you're specifically looking for features, right? Like there are some where they have like a bass boost function, or like that Army ADI2 has a ton of digital EQ functions and stuff like that. Then yeah, it becomes worth it if those features are really important to you. Other considerations would be like, balanced. If there are some headphones where like you really do need power, and then having a balanced output is pretty important. Any update on your research about drivers? No, I still, like, this is something that's just sort of ongoing, and eventually I will need to compile an entire post or an article on like basically what we found, or several articles, what we found in doing this. But at the moment, the outcome is that there hasn't been anything identifiable in a graph, in a frequency response graph, that we can point to as being subjectively better, other than having good tonal balance, but we already knew that. But as far as the parameters that we test, the biggest one by far, in fact I'd say the only one when all things are kept equal, not the only one because there was another one, but like the biggest one is definitely changing diaphragm material. That seemed to have the strongest impact on subjective technicalities. And this is all like EQ'd to the same result, right? The tuning is meant to be as close as it possibly can. And yeah, it was the strongest factor. Let's continue. Will the Moondrop Electrostatic Zero be better than the Venus? No idea. It's not a spicy take. I have no idea. Both MMCX and 2-pin connectors are so flimsy, all IAMs should switch to Pentacon ear. Interesting. Tangzu Wainer, I don't know how to say that, is clearer than AirPods. AirPods is muddy. I need to try that one. I really like the AirPods Pro 2 though. I think AirPods Pro 2 is solid, is the best. You hear it. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. It's the. I was gonna say you heard it here first, but you didn't. But it is the best true wireless in-ear, in my opinion. Specifically, the second gen. Life is a nightmare, and we're all trying to distract ourselves with music and gear. Yeah. Although some gear makes it even more of a nightmare. The benefits of planars are more abundant and more important than the drawbacks in comparison to the dynamic. So I think so. Not everybody agrees, right? There are some people who are just like, I want just all the bass and all the slam and only... Oh, wait, Phil's in the chat. No, I get it. There are different qualities associated with planars and dynamics, and I tend to prefer the ones that you get from planars, yeah. So I agree with that. Microphones can be used at low volume. Microphones can be used as low volume speakers in a pinch. So why not learn to talk through our ears in addition to listening? Oh my god. What? Spicy take. Moondrop Alice earbuds are weirdly designed and big so that it doesn't create a great seal on some ears without pushing and holding it in place. Its connectivity is also really inconsistent. I haven't tried that. I tried the Sparks, but I've heard interesting things about the Alice. I looked at the frequency response of it, and it looks like it probably won't be for me, but that's interesting to know. The Sandara and HG6XX is better than all IEMs at any price point. I mean, it could just be that you haven't heard IEMs that are the right kind of ear gain assumed for you. Let me be careful how I said that, because it's not entirely HRTF when the pinna is bypassed. It's like canal effects and drum effects and whatever else that's past that. But there's a lot that has to be assumed because of your HRTF. So it is related to HRTF, but it is not looking at a DF HRTF. So it might just be that you haven't found one that works for you. I don't think that, like, this is my issue with the Harman research. To a certain extent, it's an issue with any target that's smoothed to 1/2 or less, like many of them are. Like, they kind of have to be. That when we read them, we kind of assume that it should match, but it really shouldn't. And I'm not the first person who said this, but I agree with the sentiment that headphones should be evaluated relative to Harman, even if it's smooth to 1/2, but they should never be tuned to match anything that is smooth to 1/2 because of the HRTF, like very real HRTF effects that are never going to look smooth. They shouldn't look smooth. And to back that up, there is actually a passage that I quoted a while ago from Design Criteria for Headphones that is basically says, like, you know, it's insufficient. Like, smoothing to that degree is insufficient, and you should not do, or the resolution needs to be better. They should integrate high-grade rumble/vibration mechanism into headphones for that extra kick. Wasn't there a thing that you could, like, wear, like it was like a vest or something that you could wear that would, like, punch you in the chest when the bass hits? It was like the full immersive experience. A spicy take. BA bass can be as good as dynamic driver bass. U12T, tight and well defined. There are some that I've heard that are very good. U12T being one of them. There are others that they weren't necessarily as good, but like they would be passable for a dynamic driver bass. So I agree, it can be good. Need more mad economist streams. I'll let him know. We chat, like, regularly, so, and he helps me out with a lot of stuff. If you guys want to interact with him, we have a Discord linked in the description. Actually, I'm not sure if it's linked. I think it's linked. We have a whole section there on, like, headphone measurements, where we get into some of the sciencey stuff, and so if you're looking for that kind of discussion, that's where that is. It's you. You obviously know that. Do you still stand behind your statement that tube amps don't get interesting until around 1K? I mean, for the ones that I've heard, right? Yeah, that's still my take. I think it's actually more because I've heard a lot of tube amps that are less expensive that are just really bad. Like the frequency response is rolled off on either end, and they just don't sound very good. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions to that. I'm sure there are good ones, but of the ones that I've heard that are, you know, these cheap tube amps that you can find on Amazon, no. Have you heard the Atrium, regardless of the whole ZMF thing? I have heard the Atrium. Yeah. I haven't heard it in an environment where I'd be confident enough to give a take, though. I've heard it at a number of events, basically. Munich High End was one of them. That was the first one that I heard it at, and then I also heard it at Can't Jam SoCal. I don't know if I have quite enough time with listening to that to give a proper assessment. But the tuning is different enough from the Auteur. Like, I was kind of thinking, I was hoping that it would be like a super Auteur. I think that might have been the intention, but the tuning was different enough. So I'm almost now curious to hear, like, the Auteur Classic in comparison and see kind of like where those two fall. I don't have an opinion on the Sennheiser HD25. How much do you think audiophile terms subjectively varies between people? It's probably a natural thing of language. for that sense of a word to vary between people, but I'm curious to what extent. This is like the best question that I think I've ever gotten on any of these live streams. Yeah, this is the Wittgenstein private language problem that the whole, that video about audiophile terms was based around. The thing is, I think that those terms, in fact, I know that those terms do vary fairly substantially across, different listeners. They use them to mean different things. But when you have enough tape on a community or a certain segment of the community with people that you talk to on a regular basis about things where they've tried not just the same like model of headphone, but they've tried the same units, or you're going, like if you're going to events and you're talking to them at the events while you're trying things, you start to understand the way that they're using those terms. And a good example of this is like I've talked to Critical a lot. We've had live streams, and I've gotten a pretty good sense of the way that he uses a lot of these terms, and I realize I use them in a very similar way. Same thing with Precog Vision, where he and I use these terms in a very similar way. Metal 571 as well, right? When we hear these things, we kind of have a general sense of how the other person understands, the subjective aspects of things. So when Corinne calls something blunted, I know what he means because he refers to a headphone and calls it blunted, and I hear that headphone, I go, yeah, I get that quality. I get exactly what you mean by that. So over time, I think you can build up a kind of, language repertoire with the people that you talk to regularly, and so you can get a sense of what they mean. But yeah, thank you for that question. I love that question. That's a great topic in general because it's like you can never be certain that, because it's not just the language, right? There's the words that you're using and they may mean different things, but then there's also where your attention goes with the music that you're listening to. And while there might be trends, you can never guarantee that the specific thing that you're referring to is the same. Oh yeah, the bottlehead stuff. I'd like to try that. I'm very curious to measure stuff on the bottlehead. Yeah. Could you name some for sure colored IEMs that you still like and would consider good? The Dunu SA6, the Symphonium Meteor. Those are a little bit colored, but they're fun as hell. The Meteor I've been listening to, I did a post on it recently, but it's really good. Really solid, punchy. It's kind of like a little bit U-shaped, like bass boosted, or you'd see it this way, but bass boosted and treble boosted, upper treble boosted, but like, man, it's good. Why isn't the Odyssey MM500 talked about? I'm more talked about. I'm a mix engineer and it's phenomenal for that, but it's also great to listen to your thoughts. Yeah, I thought the MM500 was is probably the best tuned Odyssey for like correctness, but it is still shouty for me. That's the issue, right? And I think it's not about the ear gain level there, because the ear gain level is good, but it needs a little bit more of a treble lift for it to sound natural to me. But I will say it is. I mean, you could say the same thing about the HD650, that it's a little bit too relaxed in the treble, right? So I do think that it is Odyssey's best tuned headphone, and so in that sense, for mixing and mastering, I think it would be an appropriate tool. But I also think that it's a little bit upper mid-rangey there. Kind of like, I mean, the LCD5 is as well. The LCD5 is more. So in that sense, yeah, the tuning for the MM500 I think is even better than the LCD5. But both of them, if you're sensitive to like upper mid-range shout and glare, I would stick with the Edition XS. Sorry, not Edition, the LCD X 2021. I would stick with that one. Have you seen Crin's measurements of the MM500? 2 dB less than yours at 3K. Yeah, it's totally just within univariation. That 2 dB is like, yeah. If you went to a manufacturer and were like, hey, this is 2 dB different, they'd be like, yeah, that's within spec. It also depends on where you normalize, right? HG400 SE with Focusrite Scarlett. I think you'll probably be okay. I think. To be honest, I mean, I think people buy those Focusrite things for, the microphone inputs, right? But they do have a headphone out. I don't really understand. Like, there needs to be another device that's like that, right? That is output focused, that has an input as well. Because yeah, it's funny to me that the Focusrite stuff gets a lot of attention, when it's not what I would do. I'll tell you that much. Like, I have used one. I would use one specifically for microphones, but I wouldn't necessarily use it as a headphone output. I genuinely like the ultrasound signature line. Please don't kill me. Oh, oh, yikes. Hey, you like what you like, right? Let's keep going here. Yeah, I see a lot of you guys actually in the headphones.com Discord, so it's good to see familiar names. Yeah. Do you agree that a headphone is better than IEM within the same price range, or we shouldn't compare? Depends on the headphones, depends on the IEMs. But I do think that by and large, headphones are going to be more more enjoyed, because with the headphone you get to have basically more interactions with your physical anatomy, which means the manufacturer doesn't need to assume what those interactions should be for you, when you bypass them within your headphones. And that's why within your headphones, like if you get one that perfectly matches your HRTF, like exactly for the level that your ear canal is amplifying, the sound that it expects, right, that your brain expects from that amplification, then yeah, I think you can get sound that is comparable, if not better, to many headphones, but at the same time, I think it's harder to do. You're less likely to find that. Even with IEMs, like the best IEMs out there are going to have significant variance across, like what is best, but you know what I mean, right? Like, say IEMs that are highly regarded, IEMs at the top of clinical's list, let's just imagine that, right? That's not going to be universally received for that, and there's going to be quite a bit of variation for how those are received. And I know this as a fact for myself as well. Like, IEMs that are really well tuned and highly regarded, they all sound shouty to me because they all have too strong of an upper mid-range presence, and that's based on my ear canal. Like, my ear canal, for that, it just amplifies it too much, right? And you can hear that, like, or at least I can hear that when I do a manual sweep. I mean, there's lots of different software that you can do. This is the Metal 571 method of doing headphone reviews, where you just do a manual sweep to hear where the different, elevations are. And for me, most good IEMs, like the Blessing 2, like the Variations, like the Kato, they all sound a little shouty to me. Can you further comment on your impressions of the Neumann NDH30? It just didn't sound like anything special to me, but that's from like a very brief impression at a show. So it might be something where it sounded normal, and then over time that's something I would appreciate. But I'd need to get one in, do proper evaluation of it, do measurements of it, and everything before I come with a complete conclusion. The state of interface headouts is grim. Yeah, I would love for there to be a box that does everything. That does like headphone outputs, whether like it can be single-ended or balanced, doesn't matter. It just needs to have enough power for like, these, or whatever, right? Like, give it a couple watts, right? And then have some sort of microphone input, like a XLR input even. I think that would be, and then give it some EQ functions, right? Some shelf filters. A box that does everything. That's what I want. What's your take on upscaling to DSD to push the heavy lift of sigma delta modulation of the PC? I don't care. That's sorry. That's not like it's might be somebody might be into that, but like that's not. I just stream music, so there's a lot of stuff that people get into to get the most out of the files that they're using. I find personally that most streaming services, the high tiers for them, where we're talking like Amazon Music or we're talking Tidal, Spotify, Qobuz, it's probably good enough. I'm not saying that they're all the same. I think there are differences, but like, are those differences that you'd be able to tell in a blind test? It would take work. The name powers your Sysvara all by itself, but the UR is in the line. I thought the name actually sounded pretty good. Like, I was like, I didn't spend that much time listening, but I thought it had a couple of quirks for some of the, you know, like some of the choices for like the inputs, but I thought that the sound of it I thought was pretty good. And the way it looks and the way you can use the knob on it, it's awesome. Which do you prefer out of the H800S, Verite, LCD-X? Which would you keep long term? It depends. Verite is the most colored. LCD-X is the most fun. Well, planar, right? And you EQ it to your heart's content. And HD800S is the most soundstagey, but also the most shrill at around 6K. You know, I was listening to HD100S recently, that and I was listening to it off of the Forge tube amp, and that sounded pretty good. So I think it depends on what you're doing with HD100S, and same thing with the Verite, and what pads you're using and all of that. So those are all different enough where I don't know if I would say one of them, like. There is a sense in which LCD-X 2021, it would, because the 2020 version is like ridiculously bad for the tuning, like it's really weird, but the 2021 version is solid for the tuning, but it's also the one that probably would take to EQ the best. So maybe if I'm only able to have one, maybe LCD-X 2021, because then I could do all kinds of EQ. Time to talk about ratios of stiffness to compliance. Time to talk about acoustic impedance. So let's talk about the system that the headphones create with the ear. No, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not. I am not mad economist. But ratios of stiffness to compliance. That's a lot of the stuff that when we're swapping diaphragm materials, that's what gets affected. Yeah, and moving mass. Get those nerd hats on, nerd head and torso simulators on. Okay. Is crosstalk / crossfeed something headphone users should look at using or not? Personally, I'm not that into it. I've used it, and there are amplifiers that just do that by default. They're like, yeah, this is because that sounds more speaker-like, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, but I also prefer to have it not be like that. Just a personal thing. Yeah. But I get why people want to do that. I get that, you know, the speaker-like element is like the Phonitor X right here does that, right? I would never use it personally if I had the choice. Every IEM has more pinna gain than 5 dB is shout. See, shout is a feature of the balance between upper mids and treble, right? If your upper mids are too strong, like if they dominate over the lower treble and mid treble, right, like significantly, then you're going to have something that sounds shouty, regardless of where the level is at. It's going to sound like glary, like you know, vocals are going to sound like everybody's, you know, singing like they're falling off a cliff, singing like Shakira. No shots fired. I like Shakira, but you get the idea. It's that sort of like throatiness, right? That you get, kind of a glare to vocals. And you can you can tell, because if you EQ this, if you EQ up the treble, that glare kind of goes away because the balance improves. And this is my issue with, the LCD5 and the MF500, where I needed to lift the treble so that the balance improves for the upper mids, even though they're not, like, they're about in line with where they should be. It's just that the treble is so relaxed, right, that it dominates. That glaring quality kind of dominates over, the rest of the harmonics above it. While I personally tend to agree that, yeah, I mean, most good IEMs have too much ear gain, and let's stop using pinna gain, okay? Because pinna gain is the wrong word. I've used it in the past. It is the wrong word. Ear gain is what is the word we need to use. Collectively, let's just go ear gain, right? Like, I get you guys are talking about pinna compensation. I get that, but like, let's just turn it all into ear gain, because we're referring to the effects of the physical ear on the frequency response as it, before it goes to the eardrum, when measured at the eardrum. But yeah, I agree that, for the most part, most good IEMs they sound shouty. That's not something that I'm going to say for everybody, because ear canals are different. Um, 320k is good enough. It's probably good enough. 320 kilohertz is good enough. Why Odyssey 2021? Why Odyssey 2021 onward tuning is so fixated on professional tuning instead of consumer-friendly tuning with more bass? Aha. Okay. So, on the one hand, it makes perfect sense why why any headphone manufacturer would want to insert themselves in the professional domain, like recording studios and whatever else, because that is a large market, especially for high-priced items. The audiophile space is one space, but if you can do that and be in the professional market, you're reaching two different audiences, and it's a fairly important audience. Now, with that said, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing it right. They are certainly doing it better than they used to. I'll give them that credit. I think they are. But I think it's still a little bit too much forwardness in the upper mids for things to sound normal, because that's what you want in a studio environment. You want things to sound normal, or like as close to normal as they could. I've had long conversations actually with some of the folks over at Odyssey about this, and it comes down to a difference of what the speakers in a particular room end up sounding like, and matching that versus sounding normal to individual, or to a wide range of people. And I think if they'd focused on the latter, they would end up with something a little bit closer to what you get with, Harman mids and treble. Not the bass, that's a separate question, but Harman mids and treble. But I think they ended up going more towards the former there. To try and emulate studio rooms, or particular studio rooms. But yeah, I think it's a difference of methodology, really, than anything else. Now, as far as why they don't have bass, or they don't have a bass boost like you get with what the target asks for to accommodate listener preference, there are a number of reasons for that, but one of them is actually physics. And it's because with front sealed open back planar magnetic designs, I mean, it's not just planars, but like, let's talk about that, because that's what Odyssey does. Unless you have somewhat of a controlled leak in there to incur the resonance frequency, like I showed you guys earlier with the Venus, or you use an electrical filter like what you get with the Expanse. And actually Odyssey used to do that, if I remember correctly. There's no other way to get there's one other way potentially, and that's you could cut everything else, but like then you would end up with a fairly weird result. And you basically, it means that if you want to get some sort of bass boost, like a bass shelf, you have to do some sort of trickery that is going to involve a trade-off somewhere else. In the case of the controlled leak to get a boost to the resonance frequency, that can have effects further up in the frequency response, and we see that actually with with the Headphone and Sundara, I believe, but then also on some of the other ones that I've been testing, you can see the effects of that. Even when you break the seal on the Venus, what I showed you, you can see the effects of that. It's not massive, but it can have an effect. And then the other is with the filter method, the headphones become much more difficult to drive. And if you're trying to make a headphone that is accessible and can be driven from a wide range of equipment, which is what seemingly most headphone manufacturers are trying to do, that creates its own challenge, right? And that's why people don't end up, adding those bass boost functions in there. Now, the cool thing with Odyssey is that they do the Reveal Plus DSP thing, and with that, that's where they could be doing, the bass boost. And I believe for some of them, they have actually done that. I could be wrong about that, but I believe they've compensated for some of the lack of bass with their Reveal Plus. But I also think that they're not shooting for Harman. So there is also a conscious choice to go after, again, a different kind of sound, slightly different. But they are doing ear gain now, so that's good. Let's continue. I will go for another 15 minutes here, guys. I get different sound when I adjust the placement of my HE400 SE on my head. Is there a specific way to wear them? Whatever sounds best to you. But yeah, you can expect that if you go forward and backward and up and down or whatever, there is going to be a slight, variation for most headphones. Some have more variation, but headphones like these ones, they're not that significant. Did I have them on the right way? No. It immediately felt wrong. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. They'll have somewhat of a variation because the sound is being directed differently, but with headphones like these, and also the 400 SE and the Sundara and many of those kind of like larger diaphragm headphones that they have angled pads, and that creates the right angle, but apart from that, it's not that big a deal. There are other headphones, like for example on some of the DCA headphones, where if you want to get the intended sound, you have, because they have those the waveguide thing, the metamaterials filters thing in front of the driver, you have to make sure that they are sitting like lower and like kind of forward, so that your ear is to the farthest back part of the pads, of the inside of the pads. And you can replicate that with measurements as well to see the effects of that changing. I still think that's a specific design choice that I feel is it creates challenges for them, but also solves other problems. So it is what it is. Let's see. Shout is balanced between upper mids and lower mids. Yeah, that has an effect as well, but it is specifically the like, if you were to basically reduce the upper mids to be in line with the lower mids, you would remove any and all sense of shout. So yes, it is related to that as well. But what I'm mainly highlighting here with that comment is that it's not just about ear gain level. It is about ear gain level and the balance with the treble. So if you have low ear gain level but you still have some but no treble, that glare is still going to be there. That's the point. Do you think Focal has made a giant leap with the Batiste to decrease the distance between high-end audiophile headphones and Bluetooth noise-canceling headphones? All right, I've been doing a lot of testing with Bluetooth noise-canceling headphones. If you guys have seen my Twitter, oh my god, the last 2 weeks for me have been just, well, specifically this last week, but also before that, it's been endless amounts of testing noise-canceling headphones, and they are such a pain in the ass. Not specifically the Batiste, but just all noise-canceling headphones are so difficult to get accurate measurements for. And actually, shout out to VSG. I'm not sure if he's here, but VSG showed this as well in the Tech Power Up article on the Batiste that he did, where he showed the variation that you get in frequency response from pad compression. And this is why you have to do more than one seating. There's folks out there who are doing measurements that just do one seating and that's it, or one seating on each side and that's it. That is just lazy. But beyond that, it's also not rigorous enough to get an accurate result because of how much it can change, how much it can vary. And there, VSG's here right now. Speak of the devil. But all of these noise canceling headphones that I've been measuring, like just the slightest little change can have a dramatic difference in the frequency response. The PX8, I was measuring that one, and like it had two very consistent results. And depending on just the slightest little change in the seating, it gave me one or the other result. And it was like, how am I supposed to say which one is the right result for every individual, right? It's extremely difficult to do. So I think the answer there is to show both, or show the variation, because then you can get a sense of that. I think it's super important for these. For open back headphones like the Venus, that doesn't really change hardly at all, or it very minimal change, and so it's much easier to measure that. The other thing is that a lot of these headphones, not this one specifically, but like I was testing the Momentums, the Momentum 4, and then the Sony XM5s, and they have kind of like this like ear sensing thing on the inside of the cup, which you have to turn off in the app to get the result to be the right result. And then the AirPods Pro 2 as well, but turning it off in the app doesn't actually work. For that, it's super annoying. So you have to spend it takes a long time to do this, and that's why my roundup of ANC headphones is it was supposed to come out this week, but it's not. I filmed it. I want to refilm it next week because I realized there's just so much more that I want to kind of go through, and this is your life. Bring out the ham. You know how it is, man. Like when you're doing this kind of stuff, you have to simulate as best you can, the effects of a real head and a real ear, because a lot of them there are sensors that are designed to engage when it's worn on the head. And even when there is a function to turn it off in the app, you can't be guaranteed that that's going to actually do it. It certainly was, with the AirPods, it didn't have that effect. So, in any case, to get to your question about the Batiste and whether it's done work to bridge the gap between, the audiophile and the wireless stuff, I think it has. This is the best sounding Bluetooth wireless noise canceling, specifically noise canceling headphone that I've heard. And I think by a noticeable margin. However, when you're using it in Bluetooth wireless mode, you can tell that there's still some limitation based on the fact that it's Bluetooth. And I think that that's something that, unless there's a different protocol, I don't think headphones are going to be able to overcome that when they're doing this Bluetooth thing. Like, as soon as I went to the DAC mode, the wired DAC mode, it's like, this becomes like a audiophile quality level headphone, right? Not quite as detailed as a Celestia or Radiance, like not quite as technically capable, but not far off. And like if you were to use this as a USB headphone, right, like that would make a certain amount of sense. I saw some videos out there, or one particular video where a guy was talking about how, the USB DAC function was pointless because, this is meant to be a wireless headphone, and like, so why would you ever use it for that? I kind of get that for most other wireless headphones, but there is a difference in the sound quality, and it's enough to where for folks who just want to buy one headphone, it kind of makes a certain amount of sense that you would have this like all day kind of functionality for wired setup. Like for me, okay, a lot of the time if I'm on the go somewhere, if I'm not necessarily traveling, but just like working off my laptop from somewhere that isn't my main office here or in the studio, I'm working with a laptop, and I want to be able to plug headphones in, right? But I also want it to be, like, say I'm in a coffee shop in a louder environment. That's exactly what this is for. You just plug it in, And then you get the audio, the benefits that satisfy the audiophiles, the hardcore audiophiles among us. Now, of course, it is not a Radiance, and it is not a Celestia, an Aeon 2 Noir, right? These have better technical capabilities still, but in if we're talking about like the category of noise canceling headphones, this is the closest one yet to those. The other ones that I was testing, like I tested so many noise canceling headphones. I tested the 5909, which is $1,000. It's more expensive than the Batiste. I tested the PX8, which is a truly horrific sounding headphone. Like if words have meaning at all, bad sound quality should apply to that headphone. It's horrific. I have no other way to describe it. And I don't understand, like, I'm just one person, right? Like, maybe it just doesn't work for my HRTF, and for someone else's it works perfectly fine. But for mine, it was so immediately wrong sounding that I can't even put it into words. The 5909 is okay, but it has, like, it's fairly target compliant, but it has this upper treble peak when the ANC mode is engaged. And it's one where, like, yeah, if you're like 60, that maybe isn't an issue, but for me, it was like, this is a deal breaker. Then I tried the Momentum 4, which is just like enormous, thunderous, ridiculous bass. The rest of it's fine. Like, the rest of the tuning there is good, I would say. A little trebly, but like solid. It's just sub bass, monster sub bass. If you like sub bass, I can't think of anything more crazy than the Momentum 4, but it's just too much in my view. And I actually kind of think that Momentum 3 might even be better for the overall balance. Momentum 3 is closer, like, don't make the mistake of thinking that I'm comparing these, but like Momentum 3 is closer in the tonality to, like, 650-ish in terms of the ear gain, the shape of the ear gain, whereas the Momentum 4 is actually closer to the HD 800S. So sound stagey for frequency response, sure, yeah, but still massive thunderous bass. Then I tried the XM5, which is just like V-shaped madness. Then there's the AirPods Max, which has good bass, but it has, like, the rise is good into the sub bass, but it has very little ear gain, and it sounds kind of muffled. Like, it doesn't have the clarity from the presence of the upper mids to 3K, and there's a little bit of honk before that. And again, these are through manual sweeps, like manual kind of like, listening for the louder parts, because again, I had to make sure that what I was measuring on the rig was close to what I was actually hearing, so that whatever computational stuff is going on based on the coupling for my head is at least reasonably representative. And that's why it takes forever. Brandon says, I like 3 more than 4. Also has the high quality sound option. Like I can see that, right? Like, I can see a preference for the 3. The reason I prefer the 4 is that the ergonomics in the 3 it was a bit awkward, and I found that I actually cut myself multiple times on the 3 for the headband. So I like the design of the 4 better. But then I tried what else? I've tried the AKG N700 NC Mark II, and it's good for the tuning. It has the best app of all of them, but the noise canceling quality is quite bad, and it also sounds very dull and blunted for the trailing ends of tones. Like, it's technically poor. So that one, I think it's up there for one of the most pleasant, but it's not really that audiophile-y, as far as the overall sound quality is concerned. Then I tried, what else? I tried the Bose QC45, and it's super spicy in the treble. Like, it's got good noise canceling. It's comfortable, but it's pretty V-shaped. I don't know. I like that one. To me, I was like, wow, that's intense in the treble. Here's the crazy thing though. For sound quality, like, I mean, for me, the Batiste is far and away in the lead for like strictly sound quality. Like, we're not talking about noise canceling or features or anything else. Like, just sound quality. The Batiste is definitely a cut above the rest. But what I found was more interesting, I mean, that was interesting, yes, but equally interesting, if not more so, was that the Mark Levinson 5909, which is $1,000, actually sounded no better, or not really any better, than the $150 UX 3000 from Final Audio. Now, obviously, the Mark Levinson has it's a much more robust, device. It's more headphone. But as far as the sound quality is concerned, the UX 3000 is right up there with the Mark Levinson. I mean, we're talking like for target compliance, it's pretty close. It doesn't have that spicy upper treble zing that the Mark Levinson has. It's one of those where like I don't think the price. I mean, we know that price isn't a sufficient condition for sound quality, but there's an expectation that if you pay $1,000, that you're getting something that, at the very least, sound quality is a portion of that, right? And with UX 3000, it kind of demonstrates that like if that's the main focus of what you're doing, because there really isn't any other feature set for the UX 3000. If that's the main focus, if sound quality is the main focus, you can achieve a similar sound quality, right? A similar level of sound quality as what you can with $1,000, which I thought was fascinating. I know that's a long-winded answer, but like two-parted answer. One is yes, the Batiste gets closer to the audiophile world for high-end sound quality, but no, it is like there is still a gap between the Bluetooth wireless noise canceling stuff and the wired passive stuff. Pink cat headphones for the win. Accurate. Is someone dunking on haram? Yeah, I really want to try the Stax Spirit. The Odyssey. The Odyssey Stax. The Odyssey Edifier. I think that'd be really cool to try. Yeah, UX 3000 versus that one. I would love to try that. Yeah, actually, for wireless headphones, we're not talking about noise canceling for wireless stuff. The Odyssey Mobius platform is also still one to consider there. It's still really solid. The lack of UX 3000 in this discussion is a darn shame. No, I mentioned it. Oh yeah, we're just catching up. Yeah. So, and that's the crazy thing is like I was doing all this comparison with the noise canceling headphones, right? And I tested the sound, like the frequency response, both ANC on and off for all of them. I was testing the sound quality, and then I tested the noise canceling capabilities of each of them. And there's another thing I found was that like there is better and worse for noise canceling, but on just about all accounts, they all attenuated more at different frequency ranges. So like I think the clear winner there overall for like if you did like an average for how much it attenuates was the AirPods Max, and then right behind that was the XM5, I think. But the AirPods Max only really did a lot of attenuation in the lower mids, whereas the XM5 did more attenuation in higher frequencies, or well, not just higher frequencies, but like mids and upper mids. The PX8 did quite well for attenuation in the higher frequencies. It did quite poorly for attenuation in the lower frequencies, right? So they all trade blows at different ranges. And I think it makes sense to go with I can't remember what the term for this is, but like you show kind of like where the most common fundamental sounds are going to come through, for that to indicate where the winner is. But at the same time, it's like, well, maybe you're in an environment where you're mostly on the plane and where that specific plane frequency is the most important thing to attenuate, right? And then there's some headphones that are engineered specifically for that. So it's a crapshoot with the noise canceling thing. And actually, like across the board, they're all not that different from each other as far as the attenuation is concerned. The exception there being that the N700 NC Mark II is the weakest, I think. UX 3000 was not great either for noise canceling, but it still does some noise canceling. And that was the other crazy thing is like when going through all this testing, eventually getting to the UX3000 and going like, this sounds like better than stuff that's like $600. Like, it sounds better than the PX8, that's for sure. That's a bit of a rant on ANC headphones. I look forward to the days when I can just go back to doing, passive headphones. ANC is such an interesting thing. I think part of it is preference. Do people want more high end cut out of the mid range? Do people want more high end cut out of the mid range or more low end? It really varies and bothers people in different ways. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there are some that also do, that also objectively suck. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Batiste. So to give a sense of the ANC performance on the Batiste, it's like kind of near the lower end, like the worst end of ANC. But it wasn't the lowest. It was the lowest out of the high end three that I tried, that I was comparing it, that I started out with. Might be a spicy take, but sound wise, I read that as sandwich wise. Maybe I want a sandwich. The Bluetooth headphones I've tried, mostly $300 ones, struggle to reach the level even the MDR 7506 or the Techstop Pro 882, and that's pretty sad. But I think that a lot of this has to do with the compression that you get from Bluetooth codecs and stuff like that. Or at least it's interesting that you, like with the Batiste, there's a couple other headphones that do this as well, where you have like the wired USB DAC mode in addition, and you can kind of compare. And if the frequency response doesn't really change, it's like, well, you're losing something when you're doing the wireless function, because it can sound a little compressed. Like all wireless headphones can sound a little compressed as a result. Did you try the Master and Dynamic? No, I didn't try those. Apple has so much money and engineering resources. You'd think they would dominate the market. They do in the AirPods, like the in-ears, the AirPods Pro 2. Like, I think that is, this is the thing, right? Like, I'm sitting here evaluating and measuring, so many different noise canceling headphones to figure out what's the best performing. What I would personally use over all of them, if I'm going outside, and I need noise canceling or something like that, if I'm going for a walk or whatever, it's the AirPods Pro 2. That's what I would personally use. I don't use Apple products. I have an Android phone. I don't have a Mac, right? Nothing like that. But I would still use the AirPods Pro 2 because it's just so convenient. It's tiny, fits into a jacket, like I don't even think about that. So I really think that, like, for the over-ear headphones, including the Batiste, right, you have to be someone for whom the in-ears, like the AirPods Pro 2, is insufficient in some way. Maybe you don't like the feeling of having stuff in your ears, which is fair, But yeah, like, I have to recognize that my personal kind of like use case is not the way that everybody else would go about doing this stuff. And for those who are interested in high-end over-ear headphones, the in-ear stuff just isn't suitable. Or at least I imagine that that's the case, because when we're talking about, like, I mean, yeah, the sound quality is not on the level, right? Not quite on the level of the Batiste for the AirPods Pro 2. I'm just going to say that. That's not, it's pretty easy to say that. But the AirPods Pro 2 is certainly better than many of the other noise canceling headphones that are out there. Let's run down the list of what the AirPods Pro 2 sounds better than. Okay, AirPods Max, for sure, the AirPods Pro 2 sounds better. The Bose QC45, the AirPods Pro 2 sounds better. The Sony WH-1000 XM4 and XM5, the AirPods Pro 2 sounds significantly better. The what else? The PX8, the AirPods Pro 2 sounds so much better. It's not even remotely close. The 5909, I think there's an argument for the 5909. I really do. And there's a, there we go. I think it starts to lose out a little bit when we start talking about, like, the UX3000 and the N700 NC Mark II. I think that's really maybe where things start to get more in favor of over-ear headphones. But yeah, man, for the most part, I would take and Momentum 3. That's the watershed, right? For me, Momentum 3 or AirPods Pro 2. I still think the Momentum 3 probably sounds better. Bassier, but also better in a number of ways. Yeah. The amount that the AirPods Pro, or the AirPods line, is just, it's crazy popular. But they did a good job with the second one. It's good. Yeah, I think that's I'm just reading your comment there, Heart You. But, that would be an interesting one to compare. Um, let's continue for a little bit. I know I said 15 minutes, like 20 minutes ago, but I'm in a spicy zone right now. You're struggling to find a closed-back headphone around the $200 price point for gaming/movie use. Go with the DT770 or the K371. There are other ones like the Denon D1001. Oh no, wait, they don't make that anymore. It's the Cradle of Run Alive, although I don't know if you can still find that. That one was alright, but I would go DT770 or K371. DT770 for V-shape, good soundstage. K371 for neutral-ish. Yeah, K371 is not that great for gaming, but DT770 is. Yeah. Cal SE is better than Cal V2. Yeah, I haven't tried. I need to try both of those. I used to own the D1001, which is what the Cal is, and it was awesome. Or at least at the price, and at the time it was great, It's and I'm curious to try those two. I'd like to try, and the Emutique is on my list of stuff to try as well. Yeah, I'd love to. It's just like it's hard to get that stuff because it sells out pretty quick. How competitive are the planar IEMs with well-regarded dynamic driver or hybrid IEMs in the price range, like Kato? Yeah, they're pretty competitive for different things. The Timeless is if you can get the fit to be all right. Hey, what's up, El Jefe? If you can get the fit to be all right for the Timeless, right, and it doesn't fall out of your ears like it does for me, or the Raptco hook, those Hook X or whatever it's called, those are both solid. I recommend both of those. They're still the top, I think, for planars. The Wu Z10 is also like a solid choice there, or Ztian Wu. I always mix up the name. Ztian Wu is a little much on the ear gain for me personally, but yeah, I think it's pretty competitive. Okay. Let's do one more spicy question, spicy take. One more, and then we'll call it for the day. Call it for the day. I want your spiciest take here, guys. Lone Star? That's not a spicy take. I'm sorry. Cheers, guys. Thanks, Feature and Rob. All right, we're getting some good ones. IEMs are a fad. It's a trend, man. It's a trend. And these are just funny. Okay. I don't see. There's nothing that stands out yet, but all right. VSG. At what point does a DAP make sense? I'm first going to answer the one from Heartu. Big soundstage is bad for many other technical qualities. In many of the examples of this, I can see why you'd say that. I don't know if it's necessarily the case, but in many examples, I think that does happen. I enjoy listeners' take there. Okay, I'm going to answer the one from VSG because I think that's probably the spiciest. At what point does a DAP make sense, a digital audio player? And the reason why it's not actually a spicy question or a spicy take, but I think my answer is, and I think my answer is that it doesn't. I like straight up. There's no scenario like I want to get into DAPs because I want to put myself in that world to think, okay, would I ever use this? Like I want to force myself to get into that, to try and enjoy the benefits of a DAP. And every time I think to myself, or just try to use one, or start to get into it, I end up just at the same conclusion, which is just like, I don't know why I would use this over an iFi Griffin or a Q X5K or one of those other things. It's another phone-like device to carry around, and they sound great. They have functions and features. I just don't know why I would do that when I can just use my phone that I'm taking with me anyways, and a much smaller device. Having two different interfaces that you're dealing with, it just is like I don't know. It's, to me, the answer there is they don't. Plain and simple. But I'm just one person, right? Like I was actually talking to Taryn about this very question, and he was showing me one of the high-end flagship DAPs, and he's like, look at all this crazy shit that you can do. I was like, yeah, that's pretty dope. It's got one, I can't remember which one it was that he was using, but it had like, so many different EQ options that you could do. I was like, that is cool, right? And you can have that in one thing. But I know that like having that extra thing with me, maybe this is just like this is definitely just a personal thing, but I know that just having that extra thing with me it's like another thing to pack that I wouldn't want to pack. I suppose that for me, like, the well is a little bit poisoned because I everywhere I go, I carry my photography gear with me already, so I have no space for things like this. Maybe more normal people have space for things that I don't. So bring back phone jacks. Yeah, that's another way to do it. But yeah, for me, they sound fine. They and they have features and functions. I just don't personally see a use that don't fit in my, workflow. I mean, it's not going to stop me from continuing to try to, get on board with DAPs, but yeah, I just don't care. I have a hard time caring. I'll put it that way. Spicy take. You look better without that. Only when I've shaved my head and it's grown back and it's like a bit messy, so I need to shave my head again. All right. I'm going to end on this, which is a very important thing for all of us to remember. And it's from Zeb, which is: the big secret in audio is that the best DAC in the world costs $30. It's called a bottle of whiskey. And the resulting question is, do subjective technical qualities matter if you're too drunk to notice them? So have a great weekend, guys. And as usual, if you want any additional audio reviews, articles, news, coverage, etc., that's linked in the description for the audio files. Check out the website there, which also has the measurements of the Venus. And then if you guys would like to chat with me, some other folks, listener, find love on the new dating site. Okay. No, let's get rid of that. Let's just remove that. It's not clearly not enough. But yeah, if you guys want more stuff, check out our Discord because we're all hanging out in there. Yeah, have a good weekend. Bye for now.